Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And today we're talking about It Chapter 2, which is a sequel to It 1. which we saw, which was our 6th ever podcast. Way back at the start, which I went back and listened to because I'm diligent and do my homework.
And I'd forgotten we'd seen, really. I mean, I had a vague memory that we'd seen it, but I couldn't remember much about it until this one started. Then I did remember everything quite vividly.
A summary of the way we felt about the first film was the scares are quite cheap. It's got interesting elements in the story and characterization, but it's not very well put together. That might be a reasonable way of summing up this one, although I think it's better.
I think this one is better. Is it also longer? I mean,
yes, I'm sure it is. The first one was not. This is nearly 3 hours. The first one was 135 minutes, so 2 hours.
It was still long.
2 hours 15. This one's 2 hours 50.
Yeah. So this is much longer, and I think needlessly so. I think a lot of things could have cropped up. I mean, in some ways, the structure was very predictable, right? So you're introduced to all of the characters, and then all of them have a quest, and you have to see each's nightmare, and each of them overcoming the quest, and blah blah. Like, it just felt interminable. I think you could have done a couple of their quests a bit faster, right?
Yeah, perhaps.
And throughout, I felt there were things that didn't make sense, though to the film's credit, they did at the end. So, for example, at the very beginning, the film starts with this gay couple holding hands and getting queer bashed and, thrown in the river, and, that's when the clown appears. And one of them is the film director, the Quebecois film director, Xavier Dolan, who's very good in it, actually.
Yeah, he's the one who gets killed.
Yeah, but I thought, why have a gay couple getting queer bashed? I mean, and in this way, and, I mean, in a way, I thought, I had very mixed feelings about the whole thing, so on a way, I thought, well, it's good, but it's kind of good in the way that, showing the in 1970s horror film, you have a sexy woman and, at the very beginning of the film, and she gets stabbed or something, right? So they were using, I thought, the queer couple in a kind of a similar way. So, so I had very mixed feelings, and actually maybe other mixed feelings that are not a credit to me, because I thought, how stupid are you? If you hold hands in a little hick town like that, you're inviting getting bashed. But maybe that's very old-fashioned of me, because, of course, why shouldn't you have the right to do so? Yeah, but it seemed to me kind of, naive of the dangers involved or something. I didn't like it, and I didn't see where it was going. And then kind of, at the end, it all made sense, right? So I won't,
Well, I think we'll carry on with this, because it's something I want to talk about as well. But let me just quickly say a pre-spoilers idea of what the film is, which is it's a sequel to It, which was about this group of young kids. They were all about 15 years old, called the Losers Club. They called themselves that, I think. Back in 1989, they fought this demon thing called Pennywise the Clown that could shapeshift. It preyed on their fears, and they sort of managed to send it away for this 27 years. Right, that's the end of the first film. In this film, they're adults now, and they're brought back together by one of them who's stuck around in the town and kind of chasing this thing or kind of tracking it. He brings them back together, and they have to. First of all, they reconnect for the first time in 27 years, but they also kind of they face their pasts, and they're brought back to the town that kind of made them and the people that made them, and all this sort of thing. So that's sort of before spoilers. That's the praise. I mean, that's how the book works as well, though I've not read the book. But what happens in this film is, although it is set in the present day, the past, that there are extended flashbacks and kind of extensive use of flashbacks that inform what goes on in the present. And they're not just, I think one or two of them are clips from the first film, but there's a lot that's kind of original and continued storytelling of that first film. I think it's good use of flashback. Maybe we'll go on to that, but that's sort of pre-spoiler. Basically, the thing comes back, it comes back, and they have to fight it again as adults.
That's right. That's the plot.
We're in spoiler territory now, so let's talk about the gay So I think a very clear kind of gay subtext.
Yes, throughout. So basically, so I didn't understand why you begin with this preamble with the queer bashing, and then kind of at the end, you're shown that really there's been like a kind of an unrequited love between two of the characters. I forget their names.
Yeah, I think it's from one character to the other more than between.
Well, that's what I mean by unrequited.
Oh, sure, yeah. Fair
okay.
Enough. No, yeah, that's fair enough. Bill Hader plays Richie, and it turns out that he's been harbouring this affection, this love for Eddie, played by James Ranson in this. And I could kind of see where the film was heading with it. I think you're going to say, like, it starts to add up. The film is trying to build to some degree a portrait of homophobia in this small town.
Yeah.
In some of the other flashbacks, you see it again. It's again Rich when he's in the arcade playing Street Fighter, and he's playing with this kid, and you kind of get the feeling that he has a bit of a crush on this kid, and he wants him to hang out with him. Then the kid's cousin comes in, who's the sort of evil mullet-wearing baddie of the film, baddie other than Pennywise, and they call him a faggot and tell him to get out. So it's none too subtle.
Nothing about this film is subtle.
And actually, I think I am disappointed that there wasn't more of a coherence. There wasn't more coherence to that entire aspect of the film. For me, I can sort of see how this guy living in the closet for so many years and still not being able to come out, even as an adult, is realistic. But it felt like an unfinished story.
The whole film feels that way to me, right? Because I think what the film does is it provides this kind of basic psychologizing to each of the characters in a way that is extremely crude and to me unpleasant, right? So, of course, Jessica Chastain's character can't just be like a little girl who grew up and, she, the film shows you how she was abused by her father, and then like she's with an abusive husband, and so on and so forth. And it does that with each of the characters, and it just feels like almost too crude to me, really. It's kind of, it's like psychologizing by the numbers, right? And I hated all of that. I hated the psychologizing, and I hated the overcoming of it. I mean, the whole film feels like cheap psychology, because basically the message is about how you have to come to terms with the past, and you're unhappy in the present because you're not wanting to remember, but actually it's like the return of the repressed, and these horrible memories are doing not only psychic but physical damage to you. So you have to come to terms with the past in a way that enables you to remember the good things about the past and the people and your friends and so on. Yes, you could have a happier, healthier life and be more adjusted. That seems to me to be the theme of the film, really.
Yeah, the kind of message overall.
Yeah, and it's really ugh.
I think it has elements of. I mean, if you think about the way that they defeat Pennywise in the end, the way kind of Pennywise operates is by showing them their fears, and he thrives on fear. And the way that they defeat him in the end is by shouting him down and mocking him and calling it, saying you're just a clown, you're just a little headless boy, and all the stuff that they refer to, like a headless boy or like the painting from the first one that scared the little kid, they're all the fears that he showed them. So they're dismissing or mocking their own fears, but it feels not terribly thoughtful. It sort of is to say, like, just dismiss things also and diminish them.
It was not nice because for a film that claims to be as PC and as psychological as this one, really to have the solution to life's problem is to become a bully, like the bully that you suffered from.
They are bullying Pennywise at the end.
Is not the solution to the world's problems. So
it's about they shout down their fears as opposed to come to terms with them. It doesn't feel smart. It doesn't feel thought through or intelligent.
Throughout the whole first hour of the film, I was thinking, what drove Jessica Chastain and James McAvoy to sign up for this cheap thing, right? Because to me it really felt cheap, yeah. So and it felt kind of, cheap cheap in thought, and not just kind of, in budget, which it turns out is very considerable budget.
I think it's got fantastic production values, as the first one did.
Well, I want to talk about those separately, actually, because I agree with you, but I'm saying that because most of those special effects and there are set pieces of nightmares and so on, and they're very brilliantly designed, right? Like the monsters are brilliant, and the whole thing has like this surreal aspect, right? Like, an old lady with 4 mouths, and it's very surreal imagery, like really kind of extraordinary, I think. Right. But, you get most of those halfway through and towards the end, kind of. So for me, the whole first hour felt cheap. It's kind of, it's doing all this setting up of all of the characters, kind of what brings them together, the dangers that they might face in the town, right? And this is all before, like, the challenge that each of them has to overcome to retrieve a piece from the past that will enable them to,
perform this ritual.
This old Indian ritual, yawn, right? So to me, like, the question is, why are these people involved? Like, these are great actors. In fact, I kind of, sometimes, when I watch Jessica Chastain, I think she's like the most luminous presence in American cinema since Julia Roberts. I mean, there's something both beautiful about her and and just luminous, really. Like, I mean, she's incredibly pretty, amongst other things. But there's also like a luminosity. I think she's either chosen badly or she's being badly used in American cinema. And this is an example. I mean, why would somebody like her, Oscar nominated, kind of, she was riding a wave a few years ago. Why is she in a film like this, really, that I think, is so cheap in terms of its perception of people and the way that it psychologizes?
Well, she's very good in it. I think she brings real kind of humanity to it, and I think
she's great.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I think her character remains the best character, as Bev was in the first film, and Bev, the actress who played Bev in the first film, Sophia Lillis, was the best actor in that as well. And she I think she remains the kind of most complex character. Or I think in this film, less complex than the first one, where she had this abuse by her dad to deal with, and in this it's a memory, and this kind of quote unquote current abuse by her husband is something that shows up at the start and really doesn't pay off. It's just to me that felt less of a kind of, it felt to me that the abuse by her husband was less something that informs who she is now, as it's something that's meant to inform, like, how being abused by her dad is like a hangover in her life that she's never got past.
Yeah.
Which is why she kind of fell into another relationship like that.
I hated that thing with her husband. Though, she fights back and she gets out of the house and she leaves her wedding ring, at the bottom of the stairs. I mean, so, in terms of particular narratives, but they're just cliches. That's the thing about it. There's no point in speculating very much about them because, they're just cheap tropes, right?
Well, insofar as why they're being used, though, I think that's worth thinking about. I think you're right that they're cliches and they're kind of sketches. They've got these 7 characters to fit in, although they kill one of them very early, which is a cliche in itself, to kind of kill himself in the bathtub and things. But despite the fact that this is a 3-hour film nearly, they do pare characters down to kind of a few basic characteristics, which is a little disappointing. But I think there are joys and things that are interesting that come out in their interactions and come out through performances.
Well, I'm not sure about that, actually. I think there were moments at the beginning, when they were all together and they were all interacting, that I thought, oh, these performances are being very badly directed, and I did think in many instances that the children were better, than this cast of adults. I thought Jessica Chastain stood out. I thought whatever his name is, who used to be fat in the original, right?
Ben, I think, is the character.
Yeah, I thought, he was very handsome.
Jay Ryan.
And he was quite good. and I also liked the comedian, the
Bill Hader.
Yeah, the other two, you know, kind of. I thought the guy who was, you know, a German.
Yeah, the hypochondriac.
The hypochondriac one.
James Ransom.
Was a very bad performance. I thought James McAvoy was pretty much a blank this time around.
Didn't have.
Didn't make an impression at all. You know, could have been played by anybody really, and he's a fantastic actor normally. So this is just like super bland a performance, and I blame the director because, you know, we've seen the actor do other things before, and also. Who was the black librarian?
The Old Spice guy.
The old is that what they call him?
No, he's not. He's from the Old Spice adverts though that were really good, and that's who he is.
Okay.
His name's Isaiah Mustafa.
Okay.
Well, I felt he was badly served by the script, to be fair, because he's basically asked to sit in this town for 27 years, waiting to give everyone else a phone call and come back in and do some acting.
Well, it's true. You know, and I blame the director. So, you know, you can blame the writing and the directing, but that was a bad performance. So actually, you know, I all of this to say that I don't agree that the performances are good. I think some of them are, and some, and too many, kind of are a problem. You know.
Well, I meant more that things kind of come out through the interaction between the characters, and I think performances are part of that. So that scene early on in the Chinese restaurant, when they're kind of when they're reunited for the first time in 20 odd years, it felt, although it has to end up leading into a horror scene with kind of hallucinations and whatnot, up until then it felt kind of nicely observed and interesting and kind of authentic. How they haven't seen each other in this long, how they've forgotten things, how they kind of fall back into their old patterns.
That was a good moment. There were others that were not. So, for example, the final reconciliation of all coming together once they jump into, you know, that rock quarry. I mean, please, that was like embarrassing. And
which bit exactly?
When they jump into the quarry at the end of the film and they all hug.
Oh right, sorry, the pool. You mean the lake?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was like ugh.
I know there was something about that I liked. There was something about the image. No, there was something. There was something about.
I found it painful. Actually.
Well, I know because you were making noises like you always do.
Well, when it's as painful as that, it hurts.
There was the imagery. I get what you mean, and I think part of it was that they've lost Eddie. Was it? Bloody character name.
Such a bloody cliche.
They're all the same. Oh. Yeah, Eddie. They've lost Eddie. He's died, and so Rich, who was in love with him, kind of takes it worse than the rest.
And they all hug
and it's
him.
all unspoken still. Like he hasn't come out to them or anything, but he starts crying, and they all go over to him. But he's sort of it is composed in this kind of interesting, sort of slightly artful sort of way. Where
I thought it was awful.
It's like
an awful composition. You could see the artificiality of it. Actually.
Yeah, but I like that.
Well,
I liked how they're all
I don't.
They're all kind of held on to him,
it feels,
supporting him, and it was like a sort of Renaissance sculpture.
It's an unimaginative shot.
I liked it.
And it's an unimaginative composition. It feels false through and through, and the performances are a part of it.
Who cares how false it is?
Oh, I care. I mean, you were just saying before that what you liked was, you know,
I liked a certain amount
how authentic the interaction was in one thing. Well, I'm pointing out that in this thing, it's completely false through and through.
It felt artful to me.
so you know, kind of you're changing kind of the criteria.
No, I'm saying this is what I liked about this, and this is what I liked about that. It
Well,
doesn't have to be one thing all the way through. I liked that it became this kind of beautiful composition at this point.
I hate the composition, and I hate the interaction between the actors. It feels really false.
Okay.
You know, and I hate the cutting with each of them like looking at the sky as if, you know, they've had some kind of, you know, a revelation, you know, going to hug each other. I mean, please, it's one of the things I despise about American cinema is that kind of cheap sentimentality, so cheaply pictorialized.
The film does try and disarm such criticisms by having one of the characters, Bill, played by James McAvoy, be this writer, and everyone says, "Oh, your endings suck." Repeatedly, they keep telling him your endings are rubbish, man.
Yes.
And it's as if to say, you're not going to like the ending of this.
This film has a rubbish ending. Right. I mean, it actually ends like 3 or 4 times. You think it's never ending. You know, because actually that scene in the quarry, that could have been an end. But no, they have to put everybody back where they were, and then they have to tell you what happened to each of them, and ugh. Right? So, let me be clear, the only thing that I liked about this film were the set pieces. And actually what I liked most about them was the design of them, you know, which I thought was just brilliant, really. And it was kind of more brilliantly designed than filmed, right? So whoever did the monsters and whoever did the set design for those scenes is like a kind of genius, really. And that's what the film is worth seeing for. I mean, it has absolutely brilliant, surrealist imagery in all of those sequences.
No, they are really good.
Yeah.
And I like the creativity in some of the creature design things, like the head crab.
Yes.
You know, head crab with the arms coming out the edge of its eyes.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes, that was brilliant.
Great.
The old lady was brilliant.
Yeah,
you know the way that she grew, and she was really so grotesque, but grotesque in such surrealist ways. Really, I thought that was brilliant.
There's a cartoony aspect as well.
Yes.
That for some of those things, when it was like a head screaming or something, some of the times something felt very, very gruesome. Like whenever Pennywise whenever his head sort of grows and he opens his mouth and all these teeth come out, that's really gruesome and that's genuinely quite scary. But then there are other times when it's like the old woman character who kind of grows and has this kind of rictus grin on her face, felt very cartoony in the design and wasn't quite as intimidating, was more kind of playful.
The actress who played the old lady was brilliant.
Yeah, she was good.
Kind of the different ways. So it's like, you know, so she would do some things as an old lady and some things, you know, as a zombie controlled by the clown, right? And the moments of transference from one to the other state were just really brilliantly kind of acted, I thought. You know, so kind of, that was a pleasure to see.
Joan Gregson.
Okay.
Mrs. Kirsch.
Oh, fantastic. The name sounds very familiar.
Gregson. Well, there's Harry Gregson Williams, who's a film composer, but I don't know if... that's the only Gregson I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
There were things about the way that the camera moved that I also didn't like, right? So, you know, kind of, the camera is very mobile, right? And sometimes it's trying to create this effect through motion, and first the camera's moving one way, and then it's kind of moving another, you know, but I didn't understand why it was moving one way or the other, really. You know, it felt nice, or it felt symmetrical, or, you know, it gave the impression that things are moving. Yeah, but I didn't like it. There were things in the film that are very cinephile. So Peter Bogdanovich and Xavier Dolan are in it. There are winks at Nightmare on Elm Street 5. Meg Ryan is constantly referenced.
The Lost Boys.
The Lost Boys. We get a poster of You've Got Mail. We see a scene that's like a direct lift from Orson Welles' Lady from Shanghai, the mirror scene. Yeah. So, and I think those things are kind of quite fun if you're a cinephile, but I would have found them better if the film were better or conceived in another direction, really, because, you know, obviously kind of all these camera moves must have been thought through, right? And so there are obviously rhythms that the film is trying to create, right? But those rhythms could also have had another layer of meaning, right? They could have been more purposeful. They could have expressed something other than just, you know, we're going to create a rhythm here. So I thought that was very disappointing.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing that I really love is the guy who played the clown.
Oh, Bill Skarsgård.
He's fantastic.
One of the Skarsgård clan of actors.
So I think he's fantastic both as a performance, right? Because you see him with different levels of makeup, right? You see him historically, kind of, you know, and so on. But and obviously the way that the character has been pictorialized through makeup and special effects and so on, I think is also absolutely brilliant. So both the actor and the production of this character mesh beautifully and create something really striking and original, and actually something that feels more real, or with more heart and emotion than actually any of the actors playing real people are providing, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, although I think he's used in a far less effective way than it was in the first film, because this is one of the things that I said in that first podcast, which I've listened back to, is how much what a joy it was to see Pennywise interacting with characters and talking with them. And I maintain that that's always one of the most interesting and entertaining things about a villain, is when they're talking, not when they're fighting or whatever.
Well, that's true, but I think...
And he does a lot less of that here. He's used less in that way here. For instance, when they're going on their, as you call them, quests, when they all have to split up and find their tokens, which when that happens is like an excuse for them each to have their own scary set piece. He shows up in them, but there isn't an awful lot of interaction, and he uses sort of corpses and dead people and all sorts of creepy other things are used at the same time to kind of try and creep out these people. But as I recall it, in the first one, there was an awful lot more of actually interacting with the guy, and hearing him speak. And although the final fight here does have quite a lot of that, it wasn't as much fun, basically.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I like that, and actually, I agree that the best moments are the moments of interaction. But I think there were many, and those were, to me, the best parts of the film. I did kind of like that. I think for me, one of the problems with Pennywise as a character is that I don't understand how his powers work, when they don't work. I mean, the logic of all of that escaped me.
Yeah,
right?
There's this thing about the deadlights. Don't look at the deadlights, which I don't remember them being referred to in the first film. They show up here it's the Old Spice guy. What's his name? Mike, the character Mike, who's this one who's stuck around in the town and has learned all this stuff and brings them all back. He's the one who mentions the deadlights. He's the one who's been hanging out with Native Americans, learning this ritual to get rid of them. So he knows all this stuff.
But then we found out it doesn't work, really.
Well, yeah, it almost worked.
It almost works, but it doesn't.
But the point is that... So there's a thing about the deadlights, there's a thing about the ritual, which is completely perfunctory, and it's just, I have this artifact, if we blah blah blah, we can get it back into the thing and close the lid, and then it'll be gone again. So yeah, what these deadlights, these three kind of lights that revolve, like that is its true form, and Pennywise is just its sort of earth form. And you go, okay, so where does it come from? What does it do? He calls himself the Eater of Planets at one point. You're like, fine. It, like all of that, it's asking you...
I'm the Eater of Planets, fine.
Yeah. The film is kind of... Because it's so vague and doesn't add up to anything, like any explanation it gives would be equally unsatisfactory.
No, but
it's asking you to look at the way it works on these people.
Well,
that's what's supposed to be interesting.
I think in order to be scary, to be properly scary, you need kind of some information, like... why can he do all these extraordinary things at some point, and then they vanish?
I agree. I'm agreeing with you. Saying there isn't enough of an explanation, and it gets to the point where any explanation would be unsatisfactory because they can just make things up as they go along. The thing that really annoyed me, which I noticed, was when they're in that final fight in the bottom of the well, and they realise that they have to make him small because Mike says, "Oh, it's something that the Native Americans told me. Laws of physics say that you have to obey the laws of whatever size you are. So they say, let's make him small, then we can kill him." I don't know why they still think they can kill him even if he's small, because nothing like that's worked before.
Exactly.
But it's like it's inventing a rule right then. It's not like it's been set up earlier on. He just says at this one point, "Oh, we need to make him small." Oh, okay, I guess I'll go with that then.
Well, that's why it's so unsatisfactory. I mean,
yeah.
I was talking to this director, this artist, Joaquin Arras, this morning, and he was saying how he was reading Derrida and Levinas in relation to the horror film, because he's interested in horror film. And Derrida and Levinas have this thing about hospitality, and what the rules of hospitality are, and what it means to be a guest, and kind of things like that, and how he sees that as foundational to almost every horror film, right? Kind of, it's like, so part of the rules is one of, who is invited in and who transgresses, and kind of safe spaces and safe spaces that people are kind of given permission to and then transgress or not. Yeah, but the sense of like kind of these notions of hospitality, of being, you know, a guest, of being welcome and unwelcome, right? All of those kind of issues are kind of, you know, he sees as almost kind of rules of horror film. I haven't thought this through properly, but I found it very intriguing. Anyway, this film had no such rules of any kind, as far as I could tell.
I don't know. It's worth thinking about, though. I mean, that kind of stuff is in there. Like the film set a tone that I really liked throughout. I think that's one of the successes of the direction, despite the fact that kind of, I think it's true to say that the camera doesn't feel all that purposefully used, for instance, or that some of the performances are a little lackluster and feel like the characterizations aren't rich enough. There is this overall tone, you know, of going back home, seeing the town again, being reminded of everything that you. It's same sort of. I mean, it's hardly original, you know. I mean, something like The World's End probably did it more successfully. The Edgar Wright film, you know, which is about fighting your kind of demons from the past in a similar way. But I like the kind of, I like that you could feel the pain that all the characters were carrying with them.
Ugh, I thought it was all phony.
Well, then I guess that's just a difference of opinion.
It did not get to me, that's for sure. Schmaltzy glass.
It's not schmaltzy.
It is.
It's not schmaltzy. Just because I like something you didn't doesn't mean it's schmaltzy.
Well,
I mean, I thought early on, wow, this is actually quite hard. Like, you start off with this scene of homophobic hate crime, guy getting beaten up and then thrown into a river, and then he gets killed. I mean, I thought at one point, right at the start, when it was obvious that they were going to beat this guy up, or these two guys up, I thought, does Pennywise come in and eat the baddies, and does he become like a weird sort of saviour? And I was like, no, actually, the gay guy just dies as well. Like, that was really, it was harsh. And then you move on to sort of domestic violence and suicide in the bathtub.
I know, but those are all just cliches.
But I thought, it's a lot harder than I kind of expected. I mean, it's not like I was expecting it to be a tame film, but it was heading for three sort of. Despite, maybe doing them through cliche and through sketch, but it headed for these three kind of really sort of sensitive areas, or areas that could be, if not well handled, could be ridiculously sort of off kilter and out of touch and offensive. And I think mainly got away with them and actually built an idea of trauma out of it.
Well, he got away with them, but they weren't well handled, and part of the reason that he got away with them is because he interlaced them with humor. Though, I could imagine screenwriters in a room thinking, oh, wouldn't it be brilliant if the way of bringing all these people together is a suicide?
You think he interlaced them with humor?
Yes. When you're being introduced to the characters, that whole sequence with the wife and the guy in the car is played for laughs.
The wife and the guy in the car?
Yeah. The wife bullying the guy who needed to use the breathalyzer.
Oh right, yeah. Well, yes, that's true. No, but I was thinking specifically there about the suicide scene and the domestic abuse scene and the homophobic attack at the start.
I know, but
nothing funny about those.
Well, no, but he is interlacing those with the others, which are funny. So it kind of, that's how he's managing the tone.
Maybe. The first one wasn't interlaced or anything. That was a cold open. I mean...
the pre-credits. Was it the pre-credits sequence?
Yeah. That's actually quite a lot pre-title, wasn't there?
Yeah.
But that was the opening...
but then you go through each of the characters, and some, like the stand-up comedian and the guy being bullied by the wife, are meant to be funny. And then, the architect one... Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the humor worked, but I think that was kind of neither one thing nor the other. It wasn't horrifying. It wasn't quite funny, though it had a humorous aspect, right, when he's revealed, to be
wearing almost nothing, just a shirt.
Well,
he's wearing jeans or something, or shorts.
He's wearing weird jeans that cut off at the
shin.
At the shin. But the thing of overhearing the conversation, of kind of talking about the design, I mean, There's meant to be a level of humor in that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way he's. I mean, it would have been horrible if it was like just relentlessly one horrible thing after another. I don't think that's the way it is.
Yeah. No, I didn't get what you meant. I thought you meant that those scenes in themselves had humorous aspects.
No.
Yeah, which they don't.
And thank God, really, because, I don't think I could have taken it. Not just because of the subject matter and what you're being shown, but actually the brutishness with which it's being dramatized for you, really. Yeah. I mean, I did find that scene with Jessica Chastain, and the husband, just unbearable.
But I think ultimately, I think it does build this nice idea. Or I say nice. It builds this idea nicely about the trauma that these people are carrying. The thing that I don't like, what it does with it ultimately, is it says to handle your trauma, shout it down, dismiss it, forget it. I just that's what is kind of seems so thoughtless, stupid to me about the entire thing.
I thought the whole thing was stupid.
Just forget the bad bits, remember the good bits. Okay, that's nice and simple.
I know, well, that's what I mean, that it's stupid.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's like kind of, somebody who's read a few self-help books, really, and the whole film is done, through that kind of understanding of what it is to be human, of friendship, of love, of the past, of the present. It's all stupid.
Yeah. And then you end up with this thing of how they look at themselves in the reflection in the shop window, and they're their kid selves again, right at the very end of the film.
Yes.
And you go, yeah, we're still the same people. We haven't changed. And you're like, I don't know what this is meant to mean now.
Yeah.
Were they great people back then? Is it?
Well, I think what it's meant to mean is that it was lovely to be young then, and it was like a lovely place, and it was sunlit, and it was youth.
There's something reassuring about not having changed too much.
Yeah, well, also you're meant to remember the good bits, not just the horror.
But, that is it, isn't it?
So I think it's the equivalent of this Buddhist thing of being thankful or something, right? Which I am. But not when it's so dumbly kind of dramatized, really. It's kind of it's annoying to me because the film does have brilliant moments. I want to underline those, the way that those set pieces look, the way that they've been conceptualized, the way they've been executed. I mean, I think whoever did that are extraordinary artists, and it's a thrill to see such surrealist imagery, so alive, and it is kind of scary, but also it's just incredibly striking. It's it makes an impression because of the way that it distorts your way of seeing something like that, right?
Yeah, it's less scary than disturbing imagery.
Yeah,
you can look at it. It's not like you have to look away from it. You can look at it and go, "Ooh."
It's disturbing and it's funny. I mean, you could see that there's kind of an unconscious set loose, right? And it's also that surrealist thing of collaging different elements, right? So an old lady, but she's a giant now, and she's got 4 sets of teeth, right? Yeah, it's kind of collage of different elements that go into the makeup of this monster. I love that, and I think the film is brilliant. But really, I think it's a very bad screenplay, and I think it's kind of. I wouldn't say they're stupid ideas because, I mean, those are ideas that I think are those are dilemmas that are a concern to all of us, but they're dramatized in a kind of a very brutish fashion without much understanding and without much fun.
I like the way that the effect of when Pennywise is looking at the camera and the sides of the screen shake and distort.
Yes,
that's a fun effect.
Yes, there are quite a lot of those. I mean, I think
a lot of strobing as well, which you noticed on the front door of the screen. There was a sign up saying there's strobing effects in this. If you have epilepsy,
leave.
It says something really stupid like to those who are affected by strobe lighting, take any necessary action. What does that mean?
It was super.
It was really
stupid.
Dismissive.
So,
but to be fair warning, there is a lot of strobing.
All customers, especially those who are particularly sensitive to flickering strobe light sources, are advised that some scenes in this film, IT Chapter 2, contains strobe light effects. Those who may be affected should take appropriate action. And what might that be? Hanging from the ceiling, right? Actually,
but it's a good thing to warn people about because it is stroby as hell.
Yes,
which I really liked. I think we've bowed down to the epileptic lobby for far too long. We need more films with strobe lighting.
Okay, I think we better wrap this up, huh?
Yeah.
So, would you recommend it?
No, not really. I couldn't really. I mean, I would say like when it's on sort of streaming services or whatever, it's worth skipping through to the bits where there's really cool visual effects.
Yes.
Because they're fantastic to look at, as you say.
Yes.
There's loads of really brilliant lighting and design and all that sort of thing, and just create imagination in the designs, as there was in the first film. And it's just a thrill to see some of those things. Like whenever Pennywise sort of opens his mouth and gets big and stuff, it's just a thrill to look at that creepy stuff.
Yes, I agree.
But it doesn't.
And it has humor. Like, people in the theater were laughing, like the thing with the dog.
Oh, yeah, that was a great joke.
It has kind of jokes that work, but it's also almost 3 hours long, right? And to me, it didn't quite feel like 3 hours long. So to be fair to the film, but there was it reached a point where I thought, oh my god, this is long, right? Kind of, I would just wish it was over, really.
That wasn't quite my experience. I could tell it was long, and I could tell that like there was more to come. But I don't know. It's because I didn't know how long to expect it to be.
Yes,
so,
I didn't either.
So like I felt sort of this has to have been on for 2 hours now.
Yes.
I wonder where else there is to go.
God, I thought it's never ending, and actually, particularly when it got to the ending, I thought, this film is never going to end. Like, we don't need to know this. We don't need to know that. You could have ended 10 minutes ago and we would have been happy. Right? Like,
It's not quite as economical as it could be. But then at the same time, if it were any more economical, think about how much more kind of sketch-like those characterizations would be.
Not necessarily. I mean, I think a better screenwriter and a better director would have made things, particularly with this cast, could have brought out real depth and complications without needing more time. Time is not necessarily the solution to drama.
Well, that's what I mean. I meant with this director and this writer. Imagine what it would have been like if they cut even more.
Yes, important caveat there. All right. Yeah, it's kind of catch it on TV.
Yeah, it's sort of all right.
Yeah. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube, and on social media. We're on Facebook and Twitter. The website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much for listening.
Cheerio.